Cheryl suddenly felt a little scared. Cheryl was afraid that Chaney really knew that Cheryl was going to die, and Cheryl was afraid she would be Chaney's trouble again. But Cheryl had a faint expectation. If Chaney knew that Cheryl was going to die, would Chaney be a little nicer to Cheryl, even just a little bit? Cheryl was lost in thought, as if it had been a long time, but it was just a moment. A delicate figure walked out of the pharmacy and approached Chaney, holding his arm. "Brother, the medicine is ready, let's go." Winnie's mother, who was Cheryl's aunt, also died in that car accident. Winnie's father quickly recovered from the pain and remarried. That new family could no longer accommodate Winnie, so she moved into the Jones household. 3 children supported the entire Jones family. After Winnie arrived, everything changed silently. When Cheryl cried and sobbed, Chaney showed impatience for the first time. Chaney asked, "Cheryl, can you learn from Winnie and be a little more obedient and sensible? Can you give way to Winnie? This is what you owe her." Until Cheryl turned 18, Chaney looked at her with disappointment every time she returned home in the morning, drunk and reeking of alcohol. Chaney declared to Cheryl, "Chaney has been kind to you, so from now on, Cheryl is on her own. In the future, don't say that you are my younger sister anymore. My younger sister is only Winnie." Cheryl's nose twitched, and she lowered her head, feeling at a loss. Winnie whispered to Chaney, "That person seems to be Cheryl. Is she also sick? Should we go and ask?" Chaney snorted coldly from his nose and responded, "Why do you care about her? It's all her own doing." All the random thoughts that had just arisen in Cheryl's mind suddenly disappeared, and her heart felt like it had been hit by a heavy hammer. When Cheryl was a child, even if she just coughed lightly, Chaney would worry if she caught a cold. Now, even when Cheryl was very ill, Chaney didn't even bother to ask. Chaney really didn't care about Cheryl anymore. Feeling a cool sensation on her face, Cheryl raised her hand and realized that her eyes were wet. "Cheryl, it's okay. Just wait a little longer. Just wait a little longer. Then you will be relieved." The food in the hospital was really bland, so Cheryl ordered takeout. Cheryl carried a lot of food and filled the table. The fragrant smell awakened Cheryl's taste buds, and her hungry stomach finally found comfort. I picked up the chopsticks and filled them into my stomach one by one. When my stomach was full, my heart wouldn't feel empty. But eating too much eventually backfired, and I leaned over the toilet in the bathroom, vomiting uncontrollably. I sat on the bathroom floor recklessly until the nurse found me. She blamed me for not taking care of my body while secretly giving me half of her stomach-nourishing porridge. "Miss, if you harm your body like this, your family will be worried." Will Chaney worry about me? Cheryl inexplicably remembered what the doctor had said that day. "Aunt, take good care of yourself, and you can live for another 2 or 3 years. However, Cheryl had no reason to live on. Chaney had hoped for Cheryl to die for years. On the day of discharge, the familiar little nurse chased after Cheryl. The nurse handed Cheryl a talisman. "Miss, I don't know what you have been through, but if your parents were here, they would definitely feel sorry for you. So, even for their sake, you must take good care of yourself." The advice from an acquaintance was so precious at the end of life. Back home, Cheryl looked at her pale face in the mirror and thought she must maintain some decency at the end of her life. Cheryl applied makeup and her complexion looked much better. Then she went to the mall. With the rise of online shopping, there were not many people in the mall. After browsing for a long time, Cheryl finally chose a white long dress. Just as Cheryl was about to take that dress, she heard a familiar voice behind her. "Brother, this dress looks really nice. It must suit me well." It was such a coincidence that Cheryl ran into Chaney and Winnie at the mall during work hours. Chaney was a well-known workaholic. When Cheryl was 15, on a weekend, Cheryl begged Chaney to accompany her to the mall, but Chaney sternly refused due to work obligations. Now Chaney was strolling around with Winnie during a workday. When Winnie spotted Cheryl, Winnie calmly greeted her. "Cheryl, what are you doing here?" Winnie's words might have been unintentional, but they caused Chaney's expression to turn cold. Cheryl chose to ignore them, focusing solely on buying the dress and leaving quickly. When both Winnie and Cheryl pointed to the dress, the salesperson continued to apologize. Sorry, this dress is the last one available," the salesperson explained. "I was here first, so please wrap it up for me," Cheryl insisted. Cheryl thought about how she might not be able to go out tomorrow. She didn't want to be humble this time. Winnie hadn't said anything yet, but Chaney stood in front of Cheryl, just like countless times in memory. "Cheryl, give the dress to Winnie," Chaney commanded. Cheryl looked up and stared into Chaney's indifferent eyes. "Yes, I am the elder sister, so I should give in to her. Besides, I owe her. If it weren't for me, her mother would still be alive, and she wouldn't have to act according to others' will all the time." Cheryl stated, echoing Chaney's unspoken thoughts. A trace of unnaturalness flashed across Chaney's face, and Chaney coughed. It's good that you know. Hurry up and give the dress to Winnie. Cheryl pulled the corners of her mouth at Chaney, probably laughing very ugly. Cheryl didn't remember how to laugh anymore. But so what? Chaney, I won't do it! For so many years, Cheryl silently gave in to Winnie every time. Her clothes, her room, even Chaney. Now Cheryl had nothing. Chaney obviously didn't expect Cheryl to refuse. Chaney was stunned for a moment and wanted to say something else, but was stopped by Winnie. Cheryl had bought the dress she liked, but she felt no happiness at all. As the days passed, Cheryl's physical condition continued to deteriorate. Purchasing a cemetery plot became a part of Cheryl's routine. Cheryl had set her sights on the plot next to her parents' grave, but the price was too high, and Cheryl could not afford it with her remaining savings. Cheryl wondered if Chaney would give her some money, considering that she was nearing death and would finally fulfill his wish. When Cheryl arrived at the Jones residence, a grand banquet was taking place inside. Cheryl originally wanted to back out, but Winnie with sharp eyes spotted Cheryl. Winnie led Cheryl inside. Cheryl was wearing loose, casual clothes, looking like a clown among the crowd of people in suits and formal attire. Cheryl hid on the balcony, watching Chaney and Winnie standing together, toasting and chatting with others. It was fake to say that Cheryl was not envious. Cheryl blinked her eyes and turned to look at the night outside, silently thinking about when their gathering would end. Cheryl didn't know when someone came up behind her. When Cheryl reacted, she was already enveloped in Chaney's shadow. After a few years of separation, Thomas remarked, "Miss Jones seems to have lost weight." Cheryl looked into Thomas's eyes, and a sense of despair filled her heart. Cheryl wanted to escape, but Thomas blocked her way. "Old acquaintances meet. Don't we catch up?" The fear that had enveloped Cheryl at the age of 18 swept over her once more, and she kept retreating until there was no way to retreat. In a moment of panic, Cheryl took out a knife from her bag and waved it in front of Thomas to stop him from approaching. The knife was just a backup because Cheryl felt insecure, and she never thought it would become her lifesaver. But that person kept pressing on. The knife in my hand cut through his hand, blood flowing. "Cheryl, what are you doing?" Chaney's voice sounded behind me, and he slapped me hard. "Are you awake?" I was like a drowning person, mouth open but unable to breathe. My mind was in a daze, and the fierce beast in my mind was about to break free from its cage. The man covered his hand, his face full of pain. I just wanted to say hello, but she suddenly went crazy and hurt me. Mr. Jones, you need to give me an explanation, otherwise—" Winnie rushed over. Seeing the situation here, she frowned and looked at me reproachfully. Winnie exclaimed, "Cheryl, you have caused trouble for Chaney again." Trouble? Cheryl considered herself a troublemaker. The gazes of Chaney, Winnie, and the other man felt like butcher knives, slowly torturing Cheryl with each cut. Cheryl's head throbbed, her stomach ached, and she felt pain radiating throughout her body. Chaney asked, "Cheryl, what do you want me to do before you can be sensible?" Cheryl wanted to cry, but she didn't know whom to cry to. She yearned to escape from that place. Cheryl's stomach churned uncontrollably, and after several attempts to suppress it, she could no longer hold it in. Crimson blood gushed from her mouth, staining her clothes in front of her chest.